Good morning. We are learning as Chutz Refuah Shlema for Line Chai B'Serach and Shira B'Shalamis. We're on the bottom of Tesam base, falling to the bottom. Itma. Shachta Lishma Lizruk Dama Shaloi Lishma. Someone shechted. We were talking about a chatas, right? And a chatas we learned in the Mishnah. Chatas on Pesach. If you do them Shaloi Lishma, they're puzzle. Other karbanos, they are kosher, but chatas is entirely possible. You have to dispose of the carbon. You can't do the rest of the avodah. So the Gemara now is asking a question. What happens if you shecht the carbon, but the person who's the kind who's bringing the carbon saying, I'm shechting it, and I have in mind, I know this is a chatas, and I'm intending it to be a chatas. But later on, when I'm going to do the zerika of the dam, which is the later avodah, first you do shchita, kabbalah, halacha, and zerika. So I'm doing the shchita now, but I'm having in mind that when I do the zerika later on, that I'm going to do for an oila. Now, this sounds like a complicated case. Why are we getting involved in this? So the reason is because we have throughout Kachim, we have the concept of pigel. The Torah says that if you do pigel, if you're mafagel, if a kohen has in mind a machshava of chutz lezmane, that he intends to do the carbon, do the avodah outside of at the incorrect time, he's chayiv karas. The Torah says it's a specific lav was a chayiv karas on it. And that chayiv karas is only when a person has in mind that he's going to the achilas hadam, the consumption of some portion of the consumption of the carbon is going to be done chutz lezmane. So it means if he does the shchita and he says, I'm doing the shchita chutz lezmane, that's not pigel. That's just wrong because you're doing it we're talking about a machshava. You're talking about someone as a pigel is when you have a machshava. So when you do something. So he's doing the shchita at the right time. By the time he does the shchita, he has in mind that either the aktaras emurim or the dam, which is part of the achila of the carbon, a part of it's being brought onto the mizbeach. When he has in mind those things, that's going to be pigel. And that's going to be awesome. There's a similar din of chutzlam kaimai, which I'm just noting in passing because it's going to be relevant shortly in the Gemara. This is also relevant throughout Kachim. There's a din of chutzlam kaimai. If someone has a machshava that he wants the zerika to be done not in the wrong time, but in the wrong place, that the carbon is possible, but it does not make it that you chayiv karas. It just makes it possible. Those are two varieties of machshava. So there's three things, right? We have machshavas, really three or four things. So we have a machshava shlishma, which we're talking about so far, which is he has in mind that the carbon should be for a different carbon, a shina kodesh or shina bailam. He has a machshava of a different owner, and those are well, by shina bailam we're going to see that it also is about the zerika specifically, but those are the machshavas that we've been talking about till now. Then we also have the Torah's specific machshavas that it answered of pigel and chutzlam kaimai that pasel, and those are only a machshava from mishachta lishma lizuk dama shalai lishma, or pigel is always where you make a machshava about what the zrika is going to be, or some other consumption of the kachim, of the emur. So now let's get back to our question. Shachta lishma lizuk dama shalai lishma. What's the din over here? Rabbi Yochanan psula. Yochanan says taka. This machshava shaloi lishma, we have a machshava that you're going to be zerek the dam shaloi lishma is possible. Mishlaka says it's kosher. Yechanam psula mechashmer avodah le'avodah. You can have a machshava shaloi lishma, from one avodah. When you're doing this avodah lishma, but you have in mind to do it later, avodah shalai lishma, yafinu machshavas pigul, and we learn it out from pigul. Just like pigul, it can passel when you have a machshava about something you're going to do later. So too with a machshava shalai lishma, our machshava shalai lishma of shini kodesh. Shalakasham kshera ein mechash me'avodah la'avodah. He says no. You don't learn from pigul. And Rabbi Yechon and Reish Lakish have this same machlokes in a different context. The itma. We had this back in Sanhedrin and in Avodah Zarah. If someone shechs a behema and he has in mind that right now he's just shechting a behema, he's a slaughterer, he's a butcher, he's doing his job of shechting a behema. But he has in mind that he's going to then take the dam and spritz it on an avodah zarah. He's going to spritz it on a mizbeach l'avodah zarah. He also has in mind to use to bring its emurim for avodah zarah. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Asura. Rabbi Yochanan says that whole animal becomes aser b'hana. It's treated as a avodah zarah. Why is that? We learn it out. You can be asked something with an avodah of what you're going to do later on. It's very hard for us to understand this because we think like if you shecht an animal and you're planning to bring its dam or its emurim on the mizbeach, that itself seems to be that plan. It seems to be avodah zarah. But as we learned in avodah, you have to do if you're doing something that is not necessarily the way of being oived that avodah zarah, but if you do one of the avodas that are in the Beis Hamikdash, that is going to always be treated as avodah zarah. So he says this is also asura machashmei avodah la'avodah v'alfinu chutz mipnim. We learn out this din b'negea whether something is avodah zarah when you have a machshava to do a zrika later on, because we learn it out from pigul. He says the gabe avodah zarah you can't have a machshava when you're doing these shchita. There's machshava what you're going to do later on the zrika is not relevant now, and therefore he holds you don't learn out from pigul. Why do we need both of these things? So we have the same machlokes it seems. V'yechanan holds that being mechashav avodah levada, both legabe yardin of lishma, we don't learn it out from pigul, and legabe avodah zarah we don't. I'm sorry, Rabbi Yochanan says we do learn it out from pigul, and Reish Lakish says we don't. So why do we have to have both machlokes? If I would have said by this one, oh, you know where the coffee was. I couldn't find the coffee. It was also a little late. If I would have just said on this one, meaning by lishma, if it would just said by avodah zarah, I would say okay. That's why Reish Lakish says I don't learn out avodah zarah from pigul. Those are two separate things. What does avodah zarah have to do with bringing a carbon? But to learn lishma from pigul, these are both karbanis that are being brought as karbanis. So that makes more sense to learn out one from the other. On that, maybe he's made to Rabbi Yochanan that it's going to be possible. And if we would just tell you the din of lishma, that's what Rabbi Yochanan says. You're going to be possible. That's why we need both of them. Okay, so that's a machlokes. Again, this is a machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. We're not really going to go back to the avodah zarah part. Our real inyan is this din that we've said about lishma that we've been talking about for the first 10 blot. Does that apply even when the kohen, when he shechs the carbon, has in mind that he's going to be zayrik the dam shaloi lishma? He's this chatas that he's bringing. He says, "I'm going to make. I want it to be a chatas now, but later on, I'm going to be zayrik the dam l'shem oila. Is that going to be a pasal of carbon? Did we learn it out from pigul or not?" Ki aser Rav Dimi Amar Maser Rav Yirmiyah Siyul Rav Yochanan. Rabbi Law l'Siyul l'Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yirmiyah brought a riot to Rabbi Yochanan that it is going to be considered Shini Kodesh, and by Chatas therefore it's going to be possible. And Rabbi Law says a riot to Reish Lakish that it's not going to be possible. So first we're going to bring Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah Siyul Rabbi Yochanan, he proves that it's true that when you bring a carbon, when you shech the carbon shaloi lishma, that you have in mind to be zarek the dam shaloi lishma, that it's going to be learned out from pigel, that it's possible. If someone were to say the din of pigel is chutz, where he says chutz l'zmani, but that only works if he says I'm shechting. If I'm shechting, having in mind that I want to later do the zrika chutz l'zmani, that's what pigel. But if he says harini sheichet chutz l'zmani, if the kohen says he's shechting his carbon chatas, and he says, I want the shechita to be chutz l'zmani. Now, first of all, it's hard to know what chutz l'zmani of a shechita would be. And second of all, he's not doing a chutz l'zmani. So, shu kosher, that's certainly going to be kosher. There's no such thing as a machshavas pigel when you shech the carbon that I say this carbon that I'm now shechting, I want it to be chutz l'zmani. It's, first of all, it's not true. And second of all, there's no such thing as the machshavas chutz l'zmani of pigel is only when you have in mind of the zrika. So by pigel, we say that if he does a chutz l'zmani on the shechita, it's going to be kosher. Shachtu almanas lizur damei chutz l'zmani pasel. But we say he can't be mechasher me'avoda l'avoda. If he shechs it, having in mind that he's going to be zarek the dam chutz l'zmani, that is pasel. Makom shemamar reini sheichet shalei l'shmai pasel. By shechita shalei l'shmai, by shini kodesh, where we've said if he shechts it, and he has in mind that this should be, instead of being for a chatas, he has in mind it should be for an oila. That passes the carbon. For sure that should be possible. You can make a kavachayr. Pigel shchita of shini kodesh is easier to do than a shchita of pigel. A shchita of pigel, if you do it in the shchita itself, it's not going to be possible. It's only possible when you do it me'avoda l'avoda. So a shechita of shini kodesh, which does passel when you do it on the shechita itself, certainly it should passel when you do it me'avoda l'avoda, when you have in mind on the zrika. Maskef l'Rav Bar Eloi says no. Malachut zman shechein kares says no. It could be that the reason why you're able to do a machshavas of me'avoda l'avoda, machash me'avoda l'avoda by pigel, where he has a machshavas chutz l'zmanai, is because there's a chiv kares on it. But a machshavas shini kodesh of shaloi l'shma, there's no chiv kares. If someone, right, we said there's a mitzvah, we wrote all our psukim, we had our whole template here, tell you that it's going to passel the carbon if it's a chatas, and that it's ma'akev, but we never said it. We never said the Torah never said a chiv kares on it. So maybe that's the reason why you're able to be mechasher me'avoda l'avoda by pigel, and you're not able to do so by lishma. So that's not a good raya that we were trying to bring. Rabbi Yirmiyah was trying to bring to Rabbi Yirmiyah, to Rabbi Yochanan. Alam Rabba Bar Ha'ilai Hachi Kama. This is what Rabbi Yirmiyah wanted to say. Like we mentioned before, there's a different variety. In addition to pigel, if someone has a machshava by the shechita that he's going to be zarek the dam chutz l'zman. It's also another way of passing the carbon. If you have a machshavas chutz l'mkayvet, he's going to be zarek the dam in the wrong place. So, but if someone says harini sheichet chutz l'mkayvet, if he says I'm doing the shechita right now, and I want it, and I want the shechita to be chutz l'mkayvet, which again, he is doing it in the mkayvet. If it's a chutz l'mkayvet, then there's no possibility. It's just possible from itself. It's not a machshava. But if you have a machshava that you say, I want this to be chutz l'mkaymet, that doesn't do anything. Shu kasha. But shachla amanas l'zugdamei chutz l'mkaymet possible. But if he has machshavas chutz l'mkaymet, which is similar to pigel, it will also, but it will passel it. Let's learn out from there that you could be mechasher me'avoda l'avoda by a machshavas shini kodesh of shaloi l'shmai. If a machshavas chutz l'mkaymet, which doesn't passel when you have the machshava on the shechita itself. You can be machasher me'avoida la'avoida. So certainly by machshavas l'shma, which you can of shini kodesh, if you're mashana in the shechita itself, it should also be able to be to passel via machshava in the later zurika. Sakta Gemara, Maskal Ravashi, Mal Chutzum Kaimesh, Chaynoi B'chal Zevachim. Chutzum Kaime is different. Chutzum Kaime applies on any carbon. It's always going to pass whenever you have a machshavas Chutzum Kaime. By the way, we couldn't answer like we said before by Pigel, because Pigel has a Chiv Karis. There's no Chiv Karis on Chutzum Kaime. Chutzum Kaime is similar to Pigel in how it works and its mechanics, but it doesn't have a Chiv Karis. So he says, so we have to come up with a different teretz, but we have a different teretz. Even though it's true that a chutzum kaimai passes from, you can be mechasher me'avoida la'avoida, that's because it's a more widespread. It has a chumrah that applies to all karbanis. But this din that shalei lishmai passes, that we're saying that shalei lishmai passes, you have a machshav in the shechita itself, that's only by Pesach and Chatas. But it's not other karbanis, oilo or shlamim. Their machshavas shaloi lishma doesn't passel. It just makes it tzleil b'alim shem chayva. Elam Ravashi hachikama says a third kasha that will be a raya to Rabbi Yechonu. Ma b'makom shem amar hareini sheichet l'shem ploini shu kasha l'zugdama shaloi lishma. If he says a machshavas shu kasha, if a person has a machshavas shini bailim. And as we said, we mentioned this before in passing, when we're learning the din of Shini Bailam. The din of Shini Bailam only applies Lagabi, we said it applies to all four avodas. But the kapara, the part that's relevant to the person that you're having in mind, is really the zrika. The zrika is what provides the kapara. So we said, therefore, the machshava of Shini Bailam only applies when you have a machshava to do the zrika later on, l'shem the other person. So when you shech the carbon, or you do the kabbalah, the halacha, and you have in mind that the zrika is going to be for Pliny, for a different person, it's going to be possible. But if he says that I'm shechting this l'shem Pliny, if a person has a machshava shini bailam where he says I'm shechting this carbon, and having in mind instead of Reuben, whose carbon it really is, I have in mind Shimon, that's going to be kosher because that's not on the zrika. So we say if he does the shechita itself, it's kosher. Lizard dama l'shem pliny possible. But if he has in mind me'avoida la'avoida that he wants the zrika to be l'shem a different person, that passes it. Malkum shemama harini sheichet shaloi l'shman shu pasel. When you have a shechita shaloi l'shma, that itself is pasel. So that's a chumrah of machshavas l'shma over a machshavas shinu bailam. Shachto amnas the dam and shaloi l'shma nedin sheyeh pasel l'chayra. That should be a raya that you could also be mechashav la'avoida of kal v'chayma from shinu bailam. Shinu bailam only works when you're mechashav me'avoida la'avoida. So there's a shema which works even when you're not mechashav la'avoida la'avoida. And you have a machshava in the shechita itself. Certainly, it will also be aser. It will also passel when you do them. Have the machshava having in mind the zrika to be shaloi l'shma, l'shem a different carbon. Rabbi Law, so that was the raya that Rabbi Yirmiyah brought a kasha on Rish Lakish and a raya to Rabbi Yechon. Rabbi Law, l'siyul Rish Lakish, Rabbi Law brought a raya to Rish Lakish that he holds you're not machashav la'avoida on a machshavas shaloi l'shma. He says, "Le'tayim bezrika v'teitzu v'kal v'chayim mibeinei mishchita v'kabal." Why did the Torah? He's going back to the general din that we say that Shinu Kodesh is possible by Chatas. And we learn it out from, in the end we learned it out from a Hekesh, from Shlomim. We had all four Avodas. We said if you do it Shlomim, if you do it Shaloi L'Shma, it's going to be possible. And we learned it out from there to Chatas. And in Chatas, we since we have Psukim by Chatas, those Psukim tell you that it's also going to be ma'akev, and it's going to be it's going to passel the carbon as well. So he asked the question: why do we have to have a pasuk to tell you that Zrika Shaloi Lishma is possible. Let's learn it out from a Kal V'chaimer from Shechita v'Kabbalah. So why did the Torah have to tell you whatever kasha you're going to ask on Shechita and Kabbalah, if you say you can't learn out from Shechita because Shechita hassles Korban Pesach. Rashi, we had this in the Gemara before, and Rashi says this over here. I could tell you Shechita, I'll tell you from Kabbalah. Kabbalah does not passel. If you do a Kabbalah, it doesn't passel your Korban Pesach if you do it not l'shem the Bailam. And Kabbalah, Mechshut Kabbalah, Dr. Rashi, Umashchita sheksher v'zar psula v'shaloi l'shma. I'm sorry, Shechita, it's kosher bizarre, it's puzzle. Shaloi l'shma zrika le'kol shekin. V'yivras mal shechita shchein paisel shaloi l'shem oichlam v'pesach. Kabbalah techiach. We'll prove it from Kabbalah. Kabbalah it doesn't puzzle l'shem oichlam v'pesach, even though it has a chumrah that it has to be b'kayin. So each one has its kula, but we can learn that from a matzat from the two of them. So why did the Torah have to tell you shaloi lishma pasels by zrika? It's coming to tell you this then, that zrika, the Torah is telling you, zrika doesn't have the same din, that even though zrika lishma, if you do a zrika shaloi lishma pasels, but if you have in mind the zrika on something else, it doesn't pasel. The Torah is telling you, that's why the Torah told you that lishma and zrika, it's only when you do it on the zrika itself, not when you have it in mind from a different avodah. How do you know from the fact that the Torah added an extra pasuk, that's coming to tell you that you can't be mechashav l'avodah? Maybe it's telling you the other way around. This is where we learn out the are mechashav l'avodah. So there, he says, well, listen, it's almost funny. Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish, who holds that you are not mechasher ba'avodah, his whole raya is because there's an extra pasuk, and really I'm maskim to the kal v'chomer that you brought earlier that would prove that you should be able to be mechasher ba'avodah. So now if we have a pasuk, it must be coming to be mitzi from your raya. He says, you brought a very good raya, Rabbi Yochanan, that you can be mechasher me'avodah, but now we have another pasuk on zrika, so it must be telling us not to do like what we would have done otherwise. Otherwise, we would say you would be mechasher me'avodah, but now we have another pasuk that tells you fakert that you should not be able to be mechasher me'avodah. The idach, and what Rabbi Yochanan respond to this? L'chayra, he can't say the pasuk is coming to tell you that you can be mechasher me'avodah because he already learned it out from kal v'chaimer. So he says no. This whole kal v'chaimer, this whole din that you're saying you want to learn out zrika from Shechita and Kabbalah is incorrect. Malahanach shchein tunis tzafin. Shechita and Kabbalah, both of them have to be done in the tzafin. When you shech the carbon, it has to be in tzafin, and therefore the Kabbalah, which is the dam, when you take the dam directly from the carbon, that's also in the tzafin. And there are some chatas that you bring inside that they don't have a zrika on the mizbeach hachitzon. And when we talk about zrika, we're referring to the zrikas on the mizbeach hachitzon. So there are chatos that don't have a zrika on the mizbeach bachutz. So therefore, there's two things that you have by Kabbalah and Shechita that you don't have by zrika. So that's why the Torah had to tell it to you. So it's not that pasuk of zrika is not extra to tell you that mechash me'avodah l'avodah, that ein mechash me'avodah l'avodah. V'idach hashtamiyah b'shlam kaimen. And the other mandama will say, no, but Lamaisa, we're learning out chatas from Shlomim. And the Torah said that the pasuk of Zrika that tells you that there's a machshava shalei l'shma that passes by Zrika is in Shlom. And Shlom doesn't have any of these things that you're saying that yeshna b'chatois apnimis and tunis tzafin. So therefore, your pircha is not a good pircha, and we really should learn it out from a kal v'chaimer. From Zrika should be learned out from Kabbalah and Eilach. Itma. Shachta l'shma lizruk dama shaloi l'shma. Rav Nachman Amar Psula, Rabba Amar Kshera. Originally, this is the same shaila that we just asked, the same machlekes Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. So Rav Nachman said it's possible like Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabba Amar said it's sheira like Reish Lakish. V'hadu bei Rabba l'gabi Rav Nachman mikal v'choy midei Rav Ashi. But Rabba changed his mind and he agreed in the end, like Rabbi Yochanan, because he agreed to the kal v'choy midei Rav Ashi that he learned from Shinui Bailim that machshavas shaloi l'shma should also be possible when you machasha me'avodah l'avodah. Okay. Well, do you know what time Slichas are? Okay, listen, we'll start this. This is a different topic. We'll get it started. We said in the Mishnah, Rebbe Eliezer says the Asham as well, in addition to the Chatas and the Pesach, that they're possible when you're Mechashev, the same din holds true by an Asham. Tanya, Chatas Baal Chet v'Asham Baal Chet. What's the reason? The Chatas comes because of you bring a Chatas when you do something wrong. When the person does a shay, he brings a Chatas. And an Asham is also brought for certain particular Averis, Asham Zelus, and person is Kichesh, certain Shavuos. So Machet Shaloi Lishma Psula, Asham Shaloi Lishma Psula. We make a Mematzinu, just like we find Chatas and Asham is similar to Chatas. So Asham also Shaloi Lishma will be possible. Amalei Rabbi Yeshua. Yeshua disagrees with Rebbe Eliezer. We didn't bring him in our Mishnah, but he is the Tana who disagrees with Rebbe Eliezer. He says Asham is not Asa Shaloi Lishma. It's not going to be possible. Chatas, the reason why it's going to be possible Shaloi Lishma because it has a din that when you spritz the dam of the Chatas, it goes on the top half of the Mizbech. But in Asham, it goes on the bottom half of the Mizbech. Amalei Rebbe Eliezer, Pesach Yechiach. I'll bring you a ride from the Pesach. It's not true. Even though its dama is not on the top half of the mizbeach, it's yeshechta shalei l'shma. It's possible. Amalei Rabbi Yeshua mal Pesach shein zmani kavua. Rabbi Yeshua says back to him, you can't ask from Pesach. Pesach is only one time of the year. You can't bring that from that araya to chatas and asham, which can be at any time. So you can't learn asham from that. Amalei Rabbi Eliezer chatas techich. Allah Rabbi Yeshua says back to him, surprisingly, Chazrani Chalila Chazer. You can't prove it because you have whatever you're going to say. I have a text, and then normally we would say a Ma'atzad. The Gemara later on is going to say, let's learn it out from a Ma'atzad, from Chatas and from Chatas and Pesach. And the Gemara is going to have a kasha on that Ma'atzad, which is the reason why we didn't say that. So Chazar Rebbe Eliezer, he was masking that you can't let it out from Chatas and Asham. The Dono Denacher, Chatas Nema Bahi, B'Shchita. We change it to who? We take out the word Shchita. The Shita Mekbetz takes out the word Shchita, and he says Chatas Nema Bahu. Hu l'shma kshera shelo l'shma psula. That tells you that l'shma it's kasher shelo l'shma psula. Pesach Nema by who? And we take out the word Zvicha, Hu l'shmei kasser shaloi l'shmei pasel, af asher nemar by Hu l'shmei kasser shaloi l'shmei pasel. We learn it out from the extra word Hu. It's telling you that only it, if you do it l'shmei, it's kasher, but if you do it shaloi l'shmei. Amalei b'shua, chas nemar hi b'shchita, l'shmei kasher shaloi l'shmei psula, pesach nemar hi b'zvicha, Hu l'shmei kasher shaloi l'shmei pasel. Aval asher l'nem b'hu el l'achak tar seimurim. We had this in the previous blot, that Hu is referring to the haktar seimurim. Hu atma shaloi tiroi emurim kasher. But that's not talking about the shechita. That's talking about the Haktar Seimurim. Haktar Seimurim is not ma'akiv, so therefore you can't use that as a raya to tell you Shaloi L'Shma is going to be that Shaloi L'Shma by Asham is possible. Amalei Rebbe Eliezer Harehu Hariyayim Kachat Kasha Machat Shaloi L'Shma Pasal Af Asham Shaloi L'Shma Pasal. Says we learn it out finally from a different limud. We learn it out Hakish from Chatas to Asham. So that will also tell you that Asham. That's finally where we learn out that Asham Shaloi L'Shma is possible. Stop over here.